CDC, in partnership with FDA, is recommending that administration of the Johnson & Johnson or Janssen vaccine resume.
Back in use after a 10-day pause.
The potential risk from this is incredibly rare.
What you need to know about the Johnson & Johnson shot and why there's a new message for women under 50.
Colorado's jail population has increased 800%.
An effort to overhaul jails in Colorado.
We have an addiction to jails and prisons, and yet our communities are not any safer.
Some worry new legislation could give criminals an easy out.
The only potential beneficiary of a bill like this are repeat and violent offenders.
Tonight, we're taking a 360 look at the plan and what it could mean for our state.
And tonight we are back to having 3 highly effective vaccines in the fight against coronavirus. The CDC lifted its 10-day recommended pause on the Johnson & Johnson shot, and it is adding a new warning.
Of course, this all comes after several cases of an extremely rare blood clotting condition in women who received the shot. The CDC says out of nearly 8 million shots given, it has reports of 15 cases, and 3 of those women died.
Good evening and welcome to Denver7 News at 10. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. Thank you for joining us tonight. So, what does this mean for you and our state's vaccine rollout?
Denver7's Eddie Guajardo is breaking it all down.
The vote is 10 in favor, 4 opposed.
Just hours after CDC board advisors voted to resume the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the CDC and the FDA lifted the pause. It comes 10 days after halting the use of the Johnson & Johnson shot due to rare and severe blood clots.
Both agencies have full confidence that this vaccine's known and potential benefits outweigh its known and potential risks in individuals 18 years of age and older.
Under the new rollout, labels will include a warning for rare blood clot syndrome for women under 50.
The FDA and CDC have concluded that the possibility of this so-called thrombosis-thrombocytopenia syndrome occurring is very low.
Out of nearly 8 million doses, 15 cases of rare blood clots have been reported. 13 women under the age of 50. 3 have died. 18-year-old Emma Berkey is one of those 15 cases. She had several seizures and needed 3 brain surgeries. She's now out of a coma, and her family continues to encourage people to get protected.
They do believe that people should get vaccinated.
The FDA says shots can start going into arms as soon as Saturday.
The potential risk from this is incredibly rare. It is not zero, but it's incredibly rare.
Dr. Michelle Barron, the Senior Medical Director of Infection at UC Health, says it boils down to making an informed decision.
The risk of you having this complication versus the potential risk of getting COVID right now certainly is on the side of getting COVID, just again because variants are present, they're more infectious, and resulting in more hospitalizations.
The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment announced the immediate use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. CDPHE says there's about 73,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine at 129 locations ready to go into arms. Prior to the pause, Centura Health gave out 13,500 Johnson & Johnson shots. They paused the use of the vaccine days before the CDC announcement after 11 people reported adverse reactions during a mass vaccination event. In a statement, they say they're in the process of reviewing the decision before resuming the use of the vaccine. Addie Guajardo, Denver7.
And the vaccine fact sheet now includes a section about the risk of blood clots, especially in women under 50. And it warns you to be on the lookout for symptoms like chest pain, leg swelling, and blurred vision.
And the CDC is now recommending the shot for pregnant women. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine flagged no significant safety concerns for moms or babies. Early trials of the vaccine didn't include anybody who was pregnant, so there's been limited information up to this point. But researchers say they plan to follow up and check the long-term safety of the vaccine during pregnancy.
Another unknown is whether COVID antibodies are passed on to babies through a mother's milk. It would be great if that were the case. Well, we found some websites that sell breast milk, and some of them claim to sell COVID antibody milk. So I spoke with the medical director of the Mother's Milk Bank in Arvada, a bank that collects breast milk, pasteurizes and tests it before it goes to babies who really need it. And she has concerns about people making that claim.
What that doesn't tell us is the amount of antibodies, the type of antibodies, and more importantly, does it really providing protection for the baby? We just simply don't know that. So to sell breast milk, having been vaccinated with a coronavirus vaccine with the advertisement, if you will, that it might help protect your baby from disease, I think is a stretch too far.
Dr. Kenau says at Mother's Milk Bank, they check for bacterial contamination, viral diseases, and for illicit drugs in the milk. And she says, be careful about buying breast milk online. The intentions may be good, but when profit is a motive, there are no guarantees about safety.
Right now, our state is really struggling to contain a fourth wave of the virus. Colorado reported nearly 1,900 new cases today, and hospital beds in use tonight, 627. That's the highest we've seen in 3 months. One area, though, where we are doing well is protective gear for medical staff. Just 1% of our hospitals expect to have any sort of shortage in the next week. And with supply looking strong, the Biden administration now is recommending those N95 masks should no longer be worn multiple times. When supplies slumped last year, the FDA eased the guidelines on the single-use masks. In an effort to slow the spread of the virus, many jails across Colorado emptied out in the last year. And in some, the population of inmates dropped by nearly a third.
And now some lawmakers are considering a bill that would fundamentally change jails and even bail in our state. Denver7's Megan Lopez takes a 360 look at one of the most controversial bills this legislative session.
Senate Bill 62 would reduce jail populations in 2 ways. First, it would require police officers in most cases to issue a court summons instead of arresting a person who commits a misdemeanor crime or certain lower-class felonies like theft or trespassing, unless the person poses a safety risk. Second, it requires judges to issue more personal recognizance or signature-only bonds instead of a cash bond, unless the person is a flight or safety risk. That means people wouldn't have to pay to get out of jail, so more would be released. There's a lot of nuance to it and also a lot of opposition. In this Denver7 360, you'll hear 8 perspectives on this jail reform bill and what it would mean for Colorado.
We have an addiction to jails and prisons, and yet our communities are not any safer.
For supporters like the ACLU, this bill is about preserving the key tenet of our judicial system.
The principle that one is innocent until proven guilty.
Colorado's jail population has increased 800%.
Bill co-sponsor Senator Pete Lee says many of the people we're locking up need help, not jail time.
Putting people in jail who are mentally ill or addicted to drugs doesn't solve mental illness or drug abuse problems.
There's 16 cells, there's 2 men per cell.
Incarcerating fewer people will save money. With COVID, some of these reduction practices were already put in place to allow jails to better social distance. An ACLU report found that jail rates in Colorado dropped 46% between last March and May, something that could save the state $210 million annually.
We should reserve our jails for the people who create a risk to people in the community.
I'm the niece of Michael Marshall, who died in jail.
Natalia Marshall believes a bill like this could have saved her uncle's life.
Uncle Michael was arrested on a trespassing charge, a very minor, non-violent crime. So he was being held for a total of 5 days, but he was being held under a $100 bond.
Michael Marshall had a psychotic breakdown in jail. Deputies forcefully restrained him. He choked on his vomit and eventually died.
There was no reason for him to even be in jail in the first place. They could have gave him a fine. They could have called family members. They could have took him to the mental health facility, anything.
She hopes this bill will help people like her uncle. Others.
It's pro-criminal.
See things differently. Senator John Cook says Senate Bill 62 would let suspects of serious crimes also walk free.
Bribing a witness, bribing a juror, animal fighting, second-degree arson, third-degree arson, fourth-degree arson.
This is a catch and release program where for serious crimes are only given a court date. And I would ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 62.
At its first committee hearing, mayors, police chiefs, and more testified against the bill.
Motor vehicle thefts are up almost 39%.
Saying while there was an initial dip in crime during COVID, things like car theft are up significantly.
This is just, I think, an invitation for criminals to continue their conduct without any interruption of serving time.
We do not know what's happening because of a crazy year with this pandemic. So why in the world would we want to pass major legislation right now?
17 sheriffs and police chiefs signed a letter expressing their opposition to the bill, and another 19 departments signed a second. At first, Denver District Attorney Beth McCann was also opposed to the bill, but after some changes,
almost all the crimes that involve victims are excluded from this bill.
She now supports it.
We often have people in jail waiting trial that really don't need to be there.
McCann agrees with the idea of issuing a court summons rather than arresting people for low-level crimes and says Denver has already been working on a way to make that happen.
One of the biggest concerns is if you have a lot of money, you can make your bond, and if you don't, you can't. And that isn't really the way bond is supposed to work.
She believes this bill will bring more equity to pretrial detentions, but says the current version could use a few more tweaks. For bail bondsmen,
I don't think it would eliminate bail in Colorado. It would significantly reduce the amount of bail that's written in Colorado.
a bill like this is bad for business. Jeff Clayton is the executive director of the American Bail Coalition and says the part he worries about the most is that defendants can fail to appear in court 3 times before being issued a cash bond.
Arrest warrants could go out every time, too. So these people could be rearrested numerous times, only to then be released, of course, because the judges can't do a bail.
Clayton says cash bonds play an important role in getting people to show up,
which essentially would require a third party or the defendant to post some property, to have some skin in the game.
He also worries about how the bill limits a judge's discretion to take things like prior criminal history into account.
The only potential beneficiary of a bill like this are repeat and violent offenders.
If passed, Senate Bill 62 would be the most significant change to jails Colorado has seen in years.
96 total inmates it'll hold.
There are a lot of people who support it and many others who oppose it. The bill still has a way to go, but this could be one of the biggest discussions this session. Megan Lopez, Denver7.
And now here's your chance. We want to hear from you. What changes, if any, should Colorado make? Email us at 360@thedenverchannel.com.
As you can imagine, this was a shock.
Metal buckled, glass shattered. Would-be thieves smashed their way into an e-bike store.
They did cause a fair amount of damage.
Why, despite the chaos, this store says it is standing strong.
After criticism, a push for transparency. How the Aurora Police Department now plans to handle questions about officer conduct.
Finally back into the 60s for Saturday. Sunday looks even better.